The President of the United States vehemently opposed it. Both houses of Congress vehemently opposed it. Both major political parties vehemently opposed it. And mainstream media coverage was overwhelmingly opposed to it. And notwithstanding...
Most people in this are also
and notwithstanding the cross-the-board opposition to the Palestinian bid for statehood, still a plurality of Americans supported it. And so it's clear that public opinion, even in the United States, is beginning to significantly shift. And that shift in American public opinion also includes significantly the shifts that are now occurring in American Jewish opinion. If you read the literature coming out from the Jewish community, there have been very serious concerns voiced about what the term they use is the distancing of American Jews from Israel.
That's apparent right here.
And this phenomenon, which is widely reported at any rate in the Jewish media and also among Jewish sociologists, notably Stephen Cohen, this phenomenon is most pronounced in the case of young American Jews, those who attend colleges and universities around the country. Although, as in all rules, there are always one or two exceptions. So, if you look at the...
He said he wanted not just a lecture, but...
Yeah, so one
There'll be a question and answer period when people can talk.
If you don't want to listen now, just leave.
So if you look at that under 40 generation, there has been among American Jews under 40 a significant decline in support for Israel. And the reason is not hard to find. The reason is not hard to find because American Jews have historically, at least nearly a century, beginning in the 1930s, American Jews have been, in their political convictions and in their voting patterns, they've been overwhelmingly liberal. They vote overwhelmingly for the Democratic Party, and when it comes to polls which ask the question, would you classify yourself as conservative, moderate, or liberal, the percentage of Jews describing themselves as liberal is by a wide margin much greater than any other ethnic or religious group in the United States. And in the United States, liberal generally means you believe in the rule of law, equality under the law. You believe in international organizations. I think that got less applause. You believe in the peaceful resolution of crises, diplomatic crises. That's what liberal means. And you saw it very, very sharply in the last presidential election. 80% of American Jews voted for Barack Obama, which was a much higher percentage than any other ethnic group in the United States, apart from obviously African Americans. Even among Latino Americans, the percentage of Latinos voting for Barack Obama was about 63%. If you judge by income, American Jews are now, by a significant margin, the wealthiest ethno-religious group in the U.S. Sometimes I get a little confused about what people are applauding. In any event, if you were to guess that people vote by their pocketbooks, American Jews should be voting Republican, the rich people's party. But no, American Jews are liberal. They don't vote Republican. They vote Democrat. And they certainly should be voting much more Republican than, say, Latinos, if you judge by pocketbook. But they don't. American Jews are liberal. And the problem that's confronted American Jews in recent years is that they simply know too much. There is much more now known about the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. There's much more now known about the human rights record, as documented by respected human rights organizations like Amnesty and Human Rights Watch. There's much more now known about the diplomatic record. And if you're Jewish, you're liberal, it's very hard to reconcile your liberal beliefs, your liberal convictions. It's very hard to reconcile that with the way Israel carries on. So to take an obvious example, if you are liberal, you're Jewish, you're young, you're university age, and like most young Jewish liberals, university age, you're idealistic. You believe in humanistic values. And if you're of that profile, and that in fact is the profile of most American young Jews, if you're of that profile, it's just very hard if you come into a public forum such as this one, and you want to defend, say, in 2006, during the Lebanon War, during the last 72 hours, when a ceasefire had already been announced by the UN, and they were about to implement the ceasefire. In those last 72 hours, Israel dropped 4 million cluster bomblets on South. Israel dropped 4 million cluster bomblets in the last 72 hours when the ceasefire had already been agreed upon. If you're young, you're Jewish, you're liberal, you're idealistic, you don't want to have to defend that. It's very hard. If you're young, you're Jewish, you're liberal, you're idealistic, okay? During the 2008-9 Israeli invasion of Gaza, Israel dropped white phosphorus, a substance that reaches 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. They dropped it on 2 hospitals in Gaza. An Al-Shifa hospital, and the second just slipped my mind, in 2 hospitals in Gaza. If you're young, you're Jewish, you're idealistic.
How many terrorists did they kill?
Do you really want to defend dropping a substance that reaches 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit on hospitals. Most Jews do not. And that's really the root of the conflict or crisis that's now opened up between American Jews and Israel. And that too opens up the possibility, the hope, that we can reach a broad public and achieve a resolution of the conflict. People are ready to listen. They want to hear, okay, what do you propose? How do you propose to end it? I acknowledge some things that are going on there are just plainly wrong. So how do you propose to end it? And I think the best place to begin when you want to try to think about how to end the conflict is by looking at somebody who faced a similar challenge to the one the Palestinians faced, and that is the challenge that the Indians faced during the British occupation of India, and the movement that was led in significant part by Mahatma Gandhi. I think there are lessons to be learned for how do you achieve a resolution, or how do you achieve the end of an occupation. A couple of years ago, I sat down and I started to plow through Mr. Gandhi's collected works, which are quite substantial. There are 100 volumes, and each volume runs to about 500 pages. Mr. Gandhi had a lot to say, although it's true to say that most of what he wrote about was diet and good health. He was a kind of premature Oprah of much more modest girth. But on the other hand, he had a lot of useful things to say, naturally, about politics. And one of his most important insights is that politics for Gandhi was not about trying to change public opinion. Most people, when they think about politics, they think they possess the truth, and their responsibility or their purpose is to bring enlightenment to the benighted masses. You have the truth, they're ignorant, they suffer, sometimes it's called from false consciousness, or they suffer from all sorts of mental afflictions and defects, and our job is to bring the truth to them. Gandhi said that's not politics. Politics for Gandhi, he said, the purpose of politics is to get people to act on what they already know is wrong. To get people to act on what they already know is wrong. So what does that mean concretely? Everybody in this room has had that experience. You get up in the morning, and from the moment you get up until the last moment before you relax into eternity, through the course of the day, you see things that are wrong. That's wrong. That shouldn't be. That's just unfair. That shouldn't be happening in a country like this. But if you're like the typical American, including myself, you don't really do much about it, except vent. And Gandhi said the whole purpose of nonviolent civil resistance, civil disobedience, it's what he called, the purpose is to quicken the dead conscience of the public, to wake it up, to get it to act on what it already knows is wrong. Practically, what does that mean? Well, I'll give you a practical example from my own life.